Hello everyone, my name is Taylor from the blog and shop The Lass in Linen, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the spooky books that I have read over about the past month and a bit. For the lead up to Halloween, I thought I would read books that were particularly gothic and spooky. It's kind of an atmosphere that I really like anyway in a book. So I thought I would share with you some of my particular favorites and some classics and hopefully some new books for you to check out yourself if you're interested. So in no particular order, I'm actually going to be sharing one that I finished very recently, and that is The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. This has been out for some time now, so I know that I'm a little bit late to reading this, but this was absolutely the perfect atmosphere for this month. This book is about our protagonist Elsie, who is newly married but also newly widowed as her husband dies very soon after they get married. Because of this, she is left with this grand estate from his inheritance. And at the beginning of the book, she travels to this estate to essentially live there and run it as would have been her job had her husband lived. The estate, which is called The Bridge, is located within a town that is very different to the life that Elsie and her husband have led up until this point. They were living in London in very high society. There was a lot of parties and a lot of glamour, and now she comes to a very, very small village full of people who are not only afraid of the estate, but inherently have some kind of anger towards Elsie now that she is essentially ruling the bridge. I was particularly interested in this book because I really enjoy the atmosphere of a Victorian Gothic, and this is set in the Victorian period, at least most of it is. It does jump back and forth in time period, which is particularly interesting. It's very dark, it's very, very creepy. I wouldn't necessarily say that for me it was scary as such, but it did definitely evoke that kind of spooky Halloween atmosphere, which is fitting since Halloween is tomorrow when this video goes up. I really enjoyed Laura Purcell's writing. I thought for the context that it was very, very fitting. And also, I just really enjoyed the way that she introduced the jump in time period. There are 3 time periods explored throughout this book, but one of them isn't introduced until about 100 pages in, which I thought was really well done and something that I actually haven't seen in a long time. So I would definitely recommend this book if you like that kind of Victorian Gothic, especially going into the winter months. This is absolutely perfect atmosphere. The next book I want to show you is one that I was very highly anticipating reading, and I am so glad I got my hands on a copy of it, and that is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. The Year of the Witching takes place in the fictional town of Bethel and follows Emmanuel, who is our protagonist. She is seen as a cursed child, as her mother essentially ran away to the forest. You find all of this out in the beginning of the book, so it's not a spoiler, but it starts out by telling you that her mother kind of ran away to the forest and months later came back pregnant with this child. She was a kind of mark on the town of Bethel. In this book, Bethel is a Puritan town and it is ruled by the prophet. It's highly religious. There are a lot of ingrained beliefs, and as Emmanuel's mother was seen as a witch, she is seen as a child of sin to bring about some evil prophecies. This was really interesting because I think it kind of, in a way, takes the Salem witch trials and turns them on their head a little bit. Emmanuel's mother dies at her birth, so a lot of this is about Emmanuel trying to find out her identity and her purpose, having no knowledge of her mother or how she became pregnant, and kind of learning that throughout the book, which I thought was really, really interesting. The kind of speculative fiction parts of the book are definitely more pronounced in the latter 2 parts, because this book is broken up into 4 parts. The first 2 parts of the book kind of read more like a historical fiction, and then it gets much more, let's say, magical in the second two parts of the book. Once again, this is a great book for atmosphere. I will say that I felt that the emphasis on the supernatural parts of the book, or the speculative fiction parts of the book, was a little bit blunt, I guess is the word, in the latter two parts, and the ending wasn't my favorite. I think it wrapped up a little bit too nicely, but overall this was written really well and I flew through it, so it definitely wasn't a problem as far as the story goes. It kept me hooked, it kept me going, and if you're into the spooky kind of witchy vibes for Halloween or the darker months, this is definitely one to check out. The next book I want to share with you is a classic that I can't believe I have never read before, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. While I was reading Dracula, I actually got a lot of mixed responses from people in my life and on social media on the kind of degrees of whether people liked it. Some people love it, a lot of people don't like it, and I think it's inherently compared to Frankenstein, which is understandable in some ways and strange in others. The story of Dracula is really interesting as well. The actual text is very different from, as far as I can tell, all media and pop culture representation. The beginning of the book follows a man named Jonathan Harker, I think, and he is a solicitor who is asked by his boss to go out and visit Count Dracula, who is looking to buy a property in England and move here. And various spooky and scary things happen while he is at Count Dracula's castle, and they follow him back to England. This is written in an epistolary format, so it's a mixture of diary entries and newspaper clippings and letters, which is really interesting and a format that I actually really enjoy, so I did like that. I will say that it drags a little in some places, and there are some particular plot lines that I don't think were completely necessary, but I do like how it considers science, and particularly medical science, at the time that the book was written, specifically the spread of syphilis throughout Europe and the attitude in Western culture is very, very interesting. So I would definitely recommend this book, especially if you haven't read it before. It is shocking how unlike the media and the pop culture portrayals that it really, really is. It's so different. And I don't actually know how you would do this for the text in media. You would have to make a very long TV show. But I really enjoyed reading it. I would say if I compared it to Frankenstein, Frankenstein is still my favorite, but this definitely creates some of that spooky atmosphere that you want leading up to Halloween. I also have a non-fiction that I'm very excited to share with you guys. I think this is an excellent book, especially if you are looking to get into fantasy or speculative fiction in the future, and that is Monster, She Wrote, The Women Who Pioneered Horror and Speculative Fiction. This is an excellent resource and an excellent guide if you are looking to explore speculative fiction like I am, as well as just being a beautifully published book with illustrations throughout. This book explores different sectors in the speculative fiction and horror genre, splits them up, and then gives a short biography and a reading list of female authors that you may have not heard before. I love this. It added far too many books to my wish list, which is really what you want from a nonfiction like this. I don't have much else to say other than it's absolutely fantastic, and I really, really recommend it. I can see myself going back to this again and again and again just to find a new author or a new book that I've not explored yet. So I really recommend this as a nonfiction, really any time of year, but obviously it's very fitting for October. The next novel that I'm going to share with you was actually very kindly gifted to me by Book Break, Emma at Book Break, who is just the sweetest person, and that is The Sin Eater by Megan Campisi. The Sin Eater is based off of an actual historical position, I guess is what you would want to say. For a very brief time in the Elizabethan period, I believe it is, there was the role of the sin eater, which a lot of the time was given to people who were convicted of some sort of crime, but maybe the crime wasn't quite big enough to be executed for, so a lot of the time it was something like theft, and that is the case for our protagonist, May Owens. So in the beginning of The Sin Eater, May Owens is arrested for thievery, and as a punishment she stays in jail for a time, and then it is decided that she will become a sin eater. A sin eater is someone who cannot and does not speak unless absolutely necessary. When they're doing their job, sometimes they are required to speak, but other than that, they are supposed to ignore society and society ignores them. Their job is to listen to the sins of the dying, and then when said person passes away, each sin is given a food which they must eat at the foot of the coffin of the past human. What this means is that the person who has passed away gets to go to heaven free of their sins, free of their past mistake, while the sin eater takes other people's sins to their grave and dies with them. They were seen specifically as the daughters of Eve, who in this time period created sin. So they were condemned to burn in hell with Eve at the time of their own passing. However, this novel takes on another storyline, and that is a mystery. There are suspicious foods turning up at the foot of the coffins of people within the royal court, and our sin eater May has to figure out how and why this is happening. And this plotline is incredibly interesting, especially considering that the context of this novel, for me at least, was something that I had no prior knowledge of and was very intrigued to find out about. I think the only con for me about The Sin Eater was that the writing wasn't really to my taste. It was a lot of modern writing with a few Elizabethan words thrown in, which kind of threw me off a little bit. But I did fly through this really fast, and I found the story so interesting. I was excitedly turning through the pages to find out what happened next, and it was one of those novels that kind of painted the scenes in my head, which doesn't happen very often, and I love it when it does. So I would still recommend this and see if you like it. The last two books I'm going to share are actually a middle grade series that I'm so excited about, and I am shocked and a little bit horrified that these books are not getting more recognition on BookTube or just on social media in general, because they're so good. And I mean, they're based on one of my favorite writers, so I'm a little bit biased for sure, but I am going to be recommending, highly recommending to you guys, Aggie Morton Mystery Queen. The first book is The Body Under the Piano, and the second book is Peril at Owl Park. As you may have already guessed, these are fictionalized middle grade mystery books based on Agatha Christie's life. Of course, none of these mysteries actually happened to Agatha Christie, but a lot of facts about her childhood and where she grew up and her family are integrated into these novels, which is excellent. Aggie Morton is a somewhat precocious, very excitable, very intelligent 11-year-old, and she seems to stumble upon these mysteries and these murders wherever she goes. The process of them is really fun. It's a middle grade series, but it reads like an Agatha Christie. The mysteries themselves are very evocative of her kind of writing. She has a best friend named Hector Poirot, which I love. You can kind of see the influence there for sure. They take place back around the time that Agatha Christie was alive, so late 1800s, early 1900s, and they're just really evocative. They're super fun. They're really easy to read. Out of all the books I am recommending in this video, I would highly suggest you pick these up. I love them so much. I am dismayed that they do not get more attention on social media because I just love these so much. They're written by Marthe Jocelyn, I don't know if I already mentioned that, and they're illustrated by Isabel Folleth, and both women have just done such a good job with these books of making them an approachable young reader's Agatha Christie. with wee facts and like tidbits in between. So please, if you read anything or if you pick up anything out of this video, make it the Aggie Morton series. You will not regret it. So those are all the books that I had to share with you today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up as it helps us grow our little community on here. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I make videos every week, so hopefully you will be able to enjoy those on a more regular basis. You can also support my work and my channel through various things that are always linked down in the description box. I have a Patreon, I have a Ko-fi account, and I also have an Etsy shop, which currently still has quite a few products in it, quilts in particular, so if you'd like to check that out, please do. All my social media links are also linked down below if you are interested in that. And lastly, all the books that I mentioned today will be linked down below as well. So if you would like a quick link to go and check those out, please, everything is down in the description box as usual. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next video.